and I will turn it over to today's presenter. We have Deanna McGregor, who is the Community Engagement Coordinator and the Homeschooling Liaison Librarian at the Liverpool Public Library. Welcome, Deanna, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Jen. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. I know there's some wacky weather in parts of the state, so I appreciate everybody that is able to make it. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my presentation. It's going. Whoop. Just give me a second. I'm working from home today, and I haven't done this since COVID, so it's been a little while. But anyway, welcome. Like Jen said, my name is Deanna McGregor. I'm currently working at the Liverpool Public Library, which is part of the Onondaga County Library System. And I have a couple of different hats, like I'm sure a lot of you do. So community engagement and also the homeschooling liaison. So a little bit about me. I actually started homeschooling my own children in 2001. So I have 17 years of homeschooling experience with 3 of my now adult children. And they are all off doing their own thing and living life. So it's been good. During that time, I did work part-time at the Liverpool Library. I also worked part-time at one of the city branches in Onondaga County. And so I had a variety of experiences, but I can tell you that homeschoolers love the library and the resources that the library has. And they're really super appreciative of librarians helping them along their way with their educational needs. So while I was homeschooling, I had the privilege of being part of some leadership roles. One of them was for a support group, which we supported parents, but we also supported students and did things together, field trips and things like that. And that was for the northern Onondaga region. And then also, one of the things that I had the privilege of doing was helping to run an academic co-op. And so that's where a group of homeschooling families would get together once a week, and we would work on enrichment activities or educational activities that are better done in a group, such as learning foreign languages or maybe labs for biology or things like that, things that lend themselves to group learning. And part of that co-op, we had about 50 plus families and over 120 kids, and it was one day a week. And it was kind of a springboard then for parents to follow up with what they were learning there and come back the next week and continue on. So that was just an example of one type of co-op. There's many types of co-ops out there, but that was one that I was involved in. And as I said, I have worked in 2 different library settings and really was the homeschool liaison at both, just because with my experience, it just naturally lent the opportunity to be that person that could keep the connections going and connect with the library. So really, it was like just the best thing. A complete privilege to do that. And let's see here. I'm just trying to get back to my. So what are we going to do today? So I'm going to definitely leave plenty of time for question and answers. And I appreciate all the questions that came in advance. And I think the presentation will answer most of those. But if not, I'm happy to answer more at the end. And I know Jen's going to kind of keep an eye on those for me as well. So we're going to look at some of the present homeschool data that's out there. We're going to learn motivations for homeschooling, why people choose to homeschool, and we'll also learn some methods of homeschooling. I'm going to give a brief overview of the New York State education laws as far as homeschooling requirements go, just so everybody has a general understanding. And most importantly, we're going to discover significant ways that public libraries can support homeschooling patrons. So if we look at this chart here, this is from the New York State Education Department tracking charter schools, public schools, non-public schools, and then homeschool. So as you can see, homeschool is the darker blue line. And it was kind of steady-ish, increasing a little bit up until 2019. And then obviously 2020, COVID changed everything. For a while, we were doing school at home, which is not really technically homeschool. But it appears, based on the data here, that homeschooling has kind of stuck around. And it didn't really go back to the pre-pandemic levels. So they're definitely around. And so this is why it's a good opportunity for us to get together today to find out how can libraries be involved in this. From the data, which I've shared in my resources that are in the slide deck, so you'll have those at the end. But we do see that there's over 50,000 homeschoolers in New York State in 2023, and that it crosses political, geographical, and demographic boundaries, whether it's rural homeschooling or city settings. It's definitely, increased. And the largest increase has been in the Hispanic population. So that's a little bit about some data there. And then this chart came from the Washington Post. Again, I linked the article. They did a whole series on homeschooling in the fall. And so they were just looking at homeschool nationwide, but also in New York State. And so this can kind of show overall, the US average has gone up 51%. And then it shows the major school districts in New York State, and you can see the percentage increase in those. So I am going to just show you another site. So in our presentation, I have a link to the New York State Education Department, and you can actually see, it will bring you to, I'm going to just show you this. Let's see if can I make this bigger? There we go. It's going to bring you to the New York State, the New York State Education Department. Let's try that again. And from there, you can download this chart where it tracks all the different districts in the state of New York. And then you can actually look, I've kind of highlighted Albany just because it's the first one on the list here, but it has data of homeschooling families, children in different grades, so K through 6, 7 through 12, and those that have disabilities. And you can see it starts tracking, well, in this case, we have data from 2010, and then this is from 2022, 2023. So you can kind of see how many families in Albany School District are homeschooling in 2023. And you can compare that to previous years. So again, I've shared this link so you'll be able to download this information, and it may just be interesting to find out the districts that you serve, how many homeschooling families there are, and what is the age population. So I found that very interesting. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. Hopefully, let's see if it's going to work. Yes. Okay, we're back. We can do this. All righty, so that is some data on homeschool. Did it work, Jen?
We still see the spreadsheet.
My apology. Let's try this again. Very thankful that you, it's very interesting. There we go. Let's try this. Better? Are we back?
We're back.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with me. So that's a little bit of our data, New York State wide. And then some people may say, well, why do you homeschool? I used to get that a lot. Why do you homeschool? So when you ask that question, it's going to be answered different from every family that you ask it to. There are some general reasons, but it could be just a variety of things like scheduling or tailored education. But you can see here there was a few responses that concern about the school environment is the number one reason people are choosing to homeschool, providing moral instruction. I am going to compare that down here because at the bottom one on this sheet, it talks about religious instruction. So it used to be homeschooling. The majority of homeschoolers were doing it for religious reasons. But post-pandemic, that's not necessarily the case. It's become a lot more diverse and in just who is homeschooling and the types of homeschooling curriculum that's out there. So, but you can kind of see reasons for choosing to homeschool, and a lot of it has to do just with the concern of the environment of schools. And I'm certainly not judging schools, and I feel like a lot of homeschoolers aren't doing that either, but they are just exercising a freedom that they have, and the opportunity that they get to homeschool if they choose that. So methods for homeschooling. Again, when you ask a homeschooler, so how do you homeschool? They're going to answer, each family you ask is going to answer differently. So think of homeschooling methods as on a continuum. So on one end, you've got kind of what looks like school from home, which would be, like you've got your textbooks at home and you're just basically doing what you were doing at school, but you're doing it in your own home using similar types of materials, and it's parent-led. And then on the other end of that spectrum, we have what we call unschooling. And that is where it doesn't look anything like school at all. And it's really kind of child-led, like what is the child interested in? We're gonna let them do what is interesting to them and then try to provide resources that enrich that even more. So, and then there's everything in between. So there's classical education, which uses rich literature. So it may be biographies and, historical fiction. So it will use, Latin. They may learn some Latin in there. Charlotte Mason is one that uses a lot of nature studies. The unit study method would be, okay, let's say your child is really interested in rockets. So we're going to learn science. We're going to learn science. How do rockets work? What are the scientific methods behind rockets? We're going to learn the history of rockets. So we've got science, we've got history. We're going to learn some math. How do rockets work? We're going to read about maybe people that have built rockets or stories that involve rockets. So we're going to involve some literature in there. So there'll be an entire study. Your spelling words could come from your reading. It'll be an entire study based on a particular topic. So I just use rockets as an example, but there's really endless opportunities for unit studies, and they can be quite fun. Montessori, which probably many of you are familiar with, that method of schooling. The project base, again, so let's say your child is really into, I had one that was really into designing things. So you could make develop your curriculum around that. So how to learn AutoCAD or maybe woodworking. So you're making some more practical things, but it's, as you know, we're always learning, and it doesn't have to take place behind a desk. So that's as project-based learning is especially great for kids that are more tactile and just learn by doing. And then the last one on the continuum is our unschooling. And that again is really more child-led. It doesn't look like school. And so that one is just a complete, different way of doing education. I did put one over here on the edge here, and this is the distance education. And so that's kind of a newer thing after COVID. Now there's a lot of academies or schools that you can enroll in and do from home. And so that's not really homeschooling, although you're doing school from home. You're not responsible for the curriculum or the scope and sequence or the time. It's being done by somebody at the distance education school, and you're just following that. So it's a little bit different than a more traditional homeschool. So what do homeschoolers have to do as far as New York State regulations, and what does the school do? So we do have regulations in place. New York State is actually one of the more regulated states as far as reporting and that type of thing. So, I mean, personally, I think that's not a bad thing. I'm a person that likes accountability, so I had no problem with what the regulations were. So, but you may hear that, oh, New York State's very regulated, but it's not that bad. So think of it as a cycle. So in the year, the first thing that's going to happen is the parent is going to send a notice to the superintendent of their intention to homeschool their child for the upcoming year. So that is typically done by July 1st. So let's say I'm a homeschooler. I know I'm going to homeschool next year. I'm going to send my letter of intent in by July 1st. Sometimes, though, you'll get people that will start homeschooling in the middle of the year. Let's say they've just moved and they were homeschooling previously and they're going to keep doing it. Or for whatever reason, they've decided to pull their child out of school and they're going to homeschool. So that is when they have to have this letter of intent to the superintendent within 14 days of starting the home instruction. So that is an exception to that July 1st. And then the school district is supposed to respond within 10 days of getting this letter. And then they send paperwork back saying, we received your letter. And here is a blank IHIP form, and I'm going to go over that next. And so they'll send that. They're supposed to respond. They don't always do that, but they are supposed to. So the IHIP stands for Individualized Home Instruction Plan. And this is the plan that the parent prepares. And basically it's saying, okay, this is what we plan to do this year, and this is how we're going to do it. So we're gonna learn multiplication and division, and we're gonna use Abeka Math level 3. Or, however they're doing it. Again, it's such a wide variety of options. But they submit that to the school district. And again, this is due, okay, by August 15th, or within 4 weeks of getting that letter back from the school saying, we received your IHIP, we received your letter of intent. So again, if you're doing it in the middle of the year, you send in your letter of intent, they respond, then you have 4 weeks to turn in your IHIP. And then you have, as a parent, you have 4 quarterly reports that you're responsible for turning in, and the parent prepares these. And so it may be, so given that example of we're going to learn multiplication and division using Abeka Math level 3, in my quarterly report, I may put down completed chapters 1 through 4 in Abeka Math level 3. So that way they know, okay, they've done 4 chapters out of 16, or, whatever that would end up being. And then the parent submits a quarterly report to the school district for each child, and the parent sets the quarterly report dates. So you take your year and you're going to break that up into 4 quarters. They have to be, you know, they have to meet a certain number of hours that are in the regulations. But you can break that up into 4, and you can pick your quarterly report date. So I do know some homeschooling families that their year starts July 1st and ends June 30th. And they will break up their quarters into 4, but they may take 2 weeks off between each quarter. So that's one way of doing it. Or maybe you'd like to follow the school calendar because you're in a neighborhood and you want to be off when the kids are off from school. So you'll follow the school calendar quarterly reports. So it really just depends, again, on how the family's choosing to homeschool. And then the final thing in the cycle is your year-end evaluation. So each year you do send in some sort of evaluation. So it can be, it's really dependent on the age of the child. And I'm not going to go into it too much in here because you can always read the regulations. I have a link for those. But you can either do a standardized test, and that's what this paragraph talks about. So it's a commercially normed reference achievement test. So for example, like the California Achievement Test or the Iowa test. So you can take one of those. Some of the schools offer those that you can go and take them there, or some of them you can administer from home. It really depends on the requirements of the test. And another option is a written narrative if you're not testing. So it just depends on the age of the student. The older students, 9th through 12th, they always have to have some sort of test at the end of the year. And then the results of assessment should be submitted with your 4th quarterly report. So you need to have that. If you did a test, you have to have that information back in when you send your last quarterly report in. So those are some of the regulations. They are part of the New York State education law. They are universal for all school districts in New York State, and they're universal for all homeschool parents in New York State. So these are the things that parents are required to do and things that the district is also required. And like I said, we just did a quick overview, but if you want to learn more, I have a link to the requirements. The standards that are in the regulations really set a minimum for graduation requirements. And many homeschool families choose to do more than what the minimum is, but not all of them do. So again, it's just dependent on the family that you're talking with. School districts are not required to provide curriculum, academic, or extracurricular support. So those are things they're not required to do. Occasionally, depending on the district, students may be allowed to do some of the extracurricular, but I think that's more of the exception. School districts are required to provide special services. So like if you had needed PT or OT, they will work with you and you go into the school and receive those services. So the fun part, how can public libraries support the homeschooling population? So you've hung around for kind of the boring stuff. So this is the more exciting things, and I'm sure you're all doing wonderful things already. So and I look forward to reading the chat notes later. So we've found 3 main ways to support homeschooling families: through the collections, through programs, and through community support. So having a dedicated homeschool collection would be so wonderful if you can swing it. So here is a picture of the one at the Liverpool Public Library. And again, we've been very fortunate to have great support from our director and our board. that enables us to have a small budget to purchase things for our curriculum, but I'm also going to show you low budget ways too. But this is what our current collection looks like. We do have this in the children's room. So we found that they're in the kids' room, and it's just much easier for parents to browse than it would be when we used to have it in the adult collection. So we have parent resources on how to homeschool, theories of homeschool, all of those things that may typically be over in the education section in adult nonfiction. We moved it all in, so it's all together. That way, while the kids are in the children's room, they can be browsing there. We also have curriculum options. So we have some of the more popular curriculum. And I mean, there's so many, there's no way you could get it all, and you wouldn't want to. But we have a little bit of sampling. So the curriculum actually circulates, and we shelve it by topic. So if you're looking for math, you can go to this shelf. If you're looking for science, you can go to this shelf. And so it's kind of not really Dewey in there. This is a very high circulating collection in our library, and it has a big turnover rate. So it does very well. And I know the homeschooling community really appreciates it. But maybe you don't have a big budget or a big space like that. That's not a problem. There are some definite low budget options. So I did just I put a picture here of 5 in a Row, which is one of my favorite curriculums for younger kids. What it does is it takes a classic children's literature book, and you read it 5 days in a row, but they give the teacher's manual gives you ideas of things to pull out. So maybe you'll be pulling out something science related or math related. It gives you idea of how to turn this great book into like a really great learning opportunity, more than it would be if you were to just read it, which is very good. So no budget or low budget, you can ask for donated curriculum from the homeschool community. Sometimes they're looking to get rid of things. Obviously, you want not old stuff. You want the latest version if you can get it. But I think you'll find that many are very willing to help do that. If you can, connect with homeschool leaders and ask them, what is your group? Or can I meet with your group? What is your group using? What would you like to see? And get feedback from them. Used curriculum sales. You'll find used curriculum sales in your area or your region by maybe searching Facebook, but they are definitely out there. I know in Onondaga County, we have a big one coming up in May. And so if you wanted to go there, maybe people that are selling stuff really inexpensively, or they may just want to get rid of it because they've got it out of their house and they don't want to bring it back in. Another thing you could do for your collection is order free curriculum catalogs. And I have a site that will give you some ideas of where you can go on there. But most, curriculum companies are more than happy to give you a free catalog for your library. So Kathy Duffy reviews, I'm going to leave that in there, but it's a great source for, she literally reviews all the homeschooling curriculum by subject. And so it would be a great place for you to go and learn the names of different curriculums that maybe you could get catalogs from. If you want to order homeschooling materials, I would suggest using Rainbow Resource, which I've linked to, Amazon, or directly from the publisher. I have tried to order a few things from like Ingram, and it's gone okay, but every once in a while I get some things that are just not good quality and not really what the homeschoolers are looking for, even though it's in the homeschool, search. So just be wary of where you're purchasing. Okay, so that's for our collections. And then homeschool programs. We find the biggest success for us or for me at either branch is if I have them during the day. when people are actually, that's their homeschool day. I know we may be tempted to be like, oh, if I have it right after school, then maybe I can get homeschoolers and public schoolers, which is a great idea. And sometimes that may work, but many of the homeschool families I know are also very busy in extracurricular activities. So they're going to basketball or karate or whatever the case may be. And so after school hours are taken up for them. So if you can, a sweet spot for us has been about 1:30, 1:30 to 2:30. And that's when the library is normally quiet. And so that's been worked well for us. So your programs have two goals. One would be to encourage social connections. Homeschoolers are looking to get connected with other homeschoolers. They don't have that automatic, friend group as the public schoolers do. So they're looking to make connections. And so the library is a great place for them to do that. And then other programs could maybe supplement their learning. So really no homeschooling family is looking for you to be, the next best teacher. They're just looking for educational opportunities for enrichment. And if you can, focus on a variety of ages, and that really just depends on what your space looks like, but I'm going to go into more detail on that. So programs for socialization, one that you could easily start is a homeschool hangout. And I know quite a few libraries are already doing this. And it's literally what it sounds like. You provide a space, you provide some crafts, some games. If you have Legos, if not, you could tell parents to bring some. And it's a great place for students to just interact with each other and for parents to interact with each other. So Homeschool Hangout, although you think it's geared towards kids, it's actually great for parents as well, because they need that connection to learn, what's happening in the area, or am I doing this right? Or what do I do next? It's so important for them to network. Homeschool Hangout's been very popular at the Liverpool Library, so we actually extended it, and we're fortunate enough to do this, where we have a homeschool hangout for tweens and teens at the same time. So when the siblings are getting a little older and they don't want to hang out with their 5-year-old siblings, it's a nice place for them. We have 2 rooms, so we can have different opportunities for different age groups. And I got a picture here of one of our teen tweens. Again, doesn't have to be, it's a hangout, so it's relatively low preparation. We put out some Legos or, games, and they're interacting. It's great. Another good one for socialization is a chess club. So kids I find are really getting into chess lately. And so if that's intimidating to you, you can actually use this chesskid.com. They have videos on there. So we have a chess club, and I will show one video a week, a club. So it will be like how to use the bishop, and they're really funny videos. The kids love them. If you don't have money for chess sets, you could have students bring their own sets. If you don't play chess, try to find a volunteer that could come and help at least get you, launched, and then you could take it from there. This was just yesterday. It was a beautiful day yesterday. I was like, I don't know who's going to show up to play chess, but we had 20 kids. So it was good. Another program we have for socialization is our Back to Homeschool celebration. So we like to do this in September, usually the week after Labor Day. And one of our things that I love to do is we do back to school photos. So how we did it is we had a green screen. Literally, that's just a green piece of fabric. And this is Mason. And so Mason is sitting on the chair in front of the green screen, and one of our staff is taking Mason's picture. And then he turned it into this adorable back to school photo. So parents love this because it's not something they get since they're not in public school. So they love the back to school photos. We had different backgrounds, and the kids could choose which background they wanted, when we did the editing, which you can do right in Canva, or whatever editing software you want to do. So back to school photos is super, super fun. If you didn't want to do this green screen, you could even just have a photo prop, booth, and then parents take their own pictures of their kids, which would be even just a more time-friendly thing for you. We also did the Amazing Library Race, or the Amazing Race Library Edition. So this was, they had used their library skills to, solve the clues and then come back and get another clue. It was super fun. And so here's an example of one of our signs as a pit stop. And this is me giving instructions for the Amazing Race. We had a great day and we have a nice side yard. So if you don't have a nice side yard, you could use a local park for some of these events. So that's another thing. Being outside when the weather's great is wonderful. And another thing we have at the Back to Homeschool celebration is our curriculum exchange table. And so this is where people can bring their old curriculum and swap it out. If they have some, they can take some. Even if they didn't bring any, they can still take some. I have quite a few people give donations to the Library of Homeschool Material that comes directly to me just because of the role I play. So I will save it up and then put it out at this event, and most of it goes, and they love that. We also have crafts, and we do group games, and that would be like games that they may not necessarily be playing as much. So think of like field days, like um, relay races or things like that, so that it's kind of forcing the kids to work together so that they get to know each other. So instead of just like board games, we're actually doing physical games that require working together in a group. And then we have our programs that support educational enrichment. And I didn't put them all up here because we do quite a few. We have book clubs. We have family book clubs. So the book clubs, really, we do that like after school hours, but a lot of homeschoolers do end up coming to that. So I did mention that. We do a family book club once a month where the whole family reads a book. And then, we talk about it. So it may be, we did Bud, not Buddy. That was the one that we did this week. So it'll be something that will probably be on the reading level of some of the students, but it's good as a family read aloud. We have our STEAM club, which some of these pictures are here. So it may be, there's different activities we do: science, technology, engineering, art, math. And so there's one involving egg cartons. And then down at the bottom, we have the Apple Pen. So we were using the Apple Pen in that one. We also have creative writing. We have a group that we started this year called Teen Life Hacks. And so that's just for teens. And we've learned things like how to present in Canva. We had somebody come from a credit union and talk about budgeting. She did a fun interactive lesson on that. So we're trying to teach them life skills. And we talked about time management. So they seem to be enjoying that. It took a little while for them to gel, but we've got a regular crowd that comes now. So that's one thing, like, don't give up. Sometimes it just takes a little while for people to, I don't know, feel comfortable with each other, maybe. So field trips, that's another one. We do those mostly in the summer. So again, that can be for homeschool students or public school students. But our homeschool students, there are high population of using the library. We do have a science and engineering fair. So that's this picture here, this young lady who's, she talked about predators and prey. It was, so each child gets the opportunity to display their science board and then talk about what their project was. And So it's great. It's accountability for doing a science project, and it's also good for public speaking. So that's our science and engineering fair. You'll see that that's a link in this presentation. It goes to a LibGuide that we have. So it talks about science fair, resources, and how to register. So you can look at that. And then another one that we do, a program for educational enrichment, is our workshop for writing a research paper, and that's for 7th through 12th grade. It's a 5-week class, and I've taught that, and it's an hour and a half each week, and they go from choosing a topic, they learn how to research using library tools, how to critique their sources. They actually write a paper. We talk about outlining, and so I linked it there. I'll let you look at it. And then on the last day, they actually present to the group their topic. They don't read their paper, but they do a presentation. So it's really great, and the teens feel very accomplished when they're done, and it's super fun for me to hear all the different topics. So we also have homeschool programs for parents, which has been really important. We now have a group at our library. They've been there for years, but they're very connected together, and they also help other people in the community. And so some of the topics we might have there, this is, like I said, a once a month group. I do it hybrid, so they can come in person or they can attend online. And we may cover topics like the New York State paperwork, how to do that IHIP, how to do the quarterly report. Or we may talk about, what does homeschool in high school look like? What are your resources? Curriculum reviews. We did learning games. So, I mean, who doesn't love to learn by playing games? So we had families share their top 2 favorite learning games, and they brought them and, showed us what they did. So that was really great. We ended up buying a couple for the library. How to do a portfolio for your child's work. And I'm going to show this guide in a minute, but I keep a record of some of the Homeschooling 101 topics on that guide. And then in the spring, we usually do a homeschool resource fair. So that is coming up in April for us. But this is a tabling event for groups that support homeschoolers. So maybe the Y does a swim and gym for homeschoolers, our Y does. So they may come and promote that. It may be some academic co-ops are there that have openings, so they may come. So you can kind of see it's a variety of people will table at this. I've had theater groups, we've had sports groups, just a wide variety. And we try to have some sort of craft or activity for the kids so that, they're busy while the parents are going around looking at the different tables and talking with people. And we also, on that one, again, the free curriculum exchange, because they love that. Another way to support, so we talked about curriculum, we talked about our collection, we talked about our programs. So our third way we can support is supporting with community support. One of the big thing is they need space to gather. So if you have a room that you're like, hey, it's really not used during this time, let me see if homeschoolers would like to use this for a hangout, or maybe they want to do a craft there that's just led by them. So you can just, see what you could offer to them if you have anything like that. And then the last thing is some sort of information center. Again, I talked about free catalogs from curriculum providers. There's also, the activities that are going on. Maybe you could have a binder with some activities, the swim groups, the choirs, or the sports. You can also get free HSLDA pamphlets. That stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They're a great site for regulations in every state. They offer getting started. But they will send you, if you contact them, they'll send you free little brochures that you can pass out that have a lot of good information, like homeschooling in high school, how to write a transcript, how to plan your 4 years. They're very, very helpful. And then lastly, a physical guide. So I'm going to try to share the guide that we've made, which is we use the LibGuides. Let's see if this works. And Jen, you'll let me know if that's not showing up. But this is our homeschool guide. So we have our different tabs over here. So we have our programs listed under one of our tabs, the New York State regulations. So if they needed to see kind of what I was going over with you guys here, but then they can also link directly to it. This is the HSLDA link so that they can go there. We have online learning resources, as I'm sure your library does. So we just highlight those. So, hey, you may want to try this to supplement your learning. This is where we have the Homeschool 101 topics, that group that meets once a month for parents. And so I will put up the slideshow that I've shared so that they can look at it. It's not the same as being there, but it's certainly helpful. And so some other resources. And then this page talks about our science and engineering fair. So when people approach me, I'm going to stop sharing this, but again, I have this in our resources, so you can see it there and look at it all you want. But I think a big thing when people approach me that are like, oh, I'm interested in homeschooling, or I don't know what to do, I start by sending them to that guide because it does have a lot of good resources. And I also send them to the physical space that we have in the library. So that's one thing you could do. So how to reach out? I know a lot people are like, well, I don't know how to get these people. Well, many of them actually may be in your library, you just may not know it. So if you see, students in there during the day, obviously they're probably going to be homeschoolers. Feel free to go up and say, hey, just wondering if you're homeschooling. Our library would love to, be a support. Can we talk? And I'm sure they'd be happy to talk. You can search Facebook groups in your area. So like if you go onto Facebook, Homeschooling Central New York, there's a couple of different groups. And if you request to join, you can say, I'm from the library. I would just like to be a welcoming space. I'm sure they'll let you join. As long as you're not selling something on there, it's usually fine. You could offer to have a library day at a co-op if you know of any co-ops in your area. You could go there. We do that. We go there and we bring books to check out and we issue library cards, and they love all the books. Like you go there and they take all the books. It's great. You could also connect with a local homeschool New York, used to be called LEA representative. So this is a Christian organization, but they do support, all religions. I think just to be like the leaders, they still like a Christian point of view. But it would be a start anyway to see, they might know where the groups are in your community. And I do have a link to that in our resources. And there's the resources. So you'll get to see those. And so I am going to actually take some Q&A. If you have any questions, my email is homeschoolnewyork or homeschoolny librarian at gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to me there, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can take questions. Thank you all so very much for listening to me babble on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Deanna. This was fantastic. And I know some of our questions, I believe, were answered as you went through your presentation. So I'm going to go back to our Q&A here. One question is, what's the length of time that your curriculum materials can be borrowed?
Great question. So they go out just like regular materials. So our materials go out for 3 weeks. And we do have an automatic renewal if nobody's waiting for them. But the idea is that they're trying the curriculum before they're going to maybe buy it, right? So it helps them try out different curriculums before they make the plunge to purchase something, because there's so much out there. So it's nice to just give them a taste of what it's like. Yeah. So
That
three
makes a lot
weeks.
of sense.
Yeah.
Another question, how do we determine the demand to start a high school collection or a homeschool collection? We get occasional homeschoolers visiting us, but from what I've seen anecdotally, they're not local residents.
Okay, so that would be very interesting. I think before I would start a collection, I would see if you could start with like just maybe a put a feeler out for some sort of educational supplemental program or a hangout, and just to see, are they out there? And if so, um, would you like circulating curriculum or homeschool, support materials? Or maybe if you can look in your catalog and see, are they going out at other libraries in your system? That might be a good way to to gauge whether they're popular or not. Good question.
We had a related question, how one would go about getting admin at your library to support pursuing this kind of collections programming, what data you might be able to refer to, or other things like that if you're not seeing a lot of those families in your library presently, or you might not know that they're there right now.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you want to shoot me an email, I did a survey in 2017 of local homeschoolers. Like I just pushed it out. So that kind of made our the reason behind what we do, the programs that we do, was based off of that survey. And so it was like, what would you like to see from the library? But it was also I could share the survey with anybody that would like it. Again, it's from 2017, so pre-pandemic. But I think if you're not seeing them, I'm guessing they're out there, but they may just not know that the library is a welcoming place for them. I know when I was homeschooling, the library I currently work at was not overly, like, you went there, but they did not want to do any programs with homeschoolers for whatever reason. But now we've realized that homeschooling and libraries, they're like a symbiotic relationship. Homeschoolers value and appreciate the free resources that are available through the library, free resources and the enrichment activities. And then the library appreciates the increased circulation and the increased usage of the library based on homeschooling population. So it's good symbiotic, but yeah, we'll have to just figure a good way to sell it.
Great, thank you. Our next question. Um, See, we had another one in the chat that was about what programs would you recommend a library starting with who's new to providing these services?
Yeah, so I would definitely start with something simple that you can easily pull off. Maybe it's even like a homeschool hangout. That one's very easy, just to help people. So advertise we're doing winter craft, and we're going to have these games, and see if people will come in to make some connections. That's probably your easiest one, or things that you're already doing. So maybe you're doing a story time. You could offer that, like, during the day, but maybe something that's more school age related. But yeah, I would start with something easy.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Advice on doing multi-age programs that keep everyone interested.
So that can be, I feel like until they hit the teen years, it's pretty doable. If you can offer a variety of, crafts and level it up for the older elementary students. It's obviously, once they get to be teens, they want their own space. So if you could possibly do it at the same time, so the family's already there, and then they'd be more inclined to bring their older students as well. And if you had a separate space for them, or even like a panel, that you could offer a different activity that would appeal more to tweens or teens. So I think if you can hit them at the same time, that's been pretty successful for us.
Great, thanks. Um, let's see. Oh, are there any key subjects that you find families are looking for in particular when they visit your homeschool collection or your regular library collections?
So obviously, like the homeschool theory books, the how to homeschool, what does it look like? Those are always popular. Um, but really, like the whole collection goes out. So whether it's math or history or science, they, yeah. But I would, if you're starting a collection, start with the parents and get there, because they're looking for different ways to do homeschooling. It morphs every year. Like you're not like, okay, this is how I do it. Then next year, okay, I'm gonna do it this way. It changes a little bit because your child changes and new things come out. So yeah.
Another question about the resources for parents. Um, we have a very small, very rural library, and they often find it difficult to coax speakers to come so far, especially when they're working with small groups. Um, do you have any experience with providing virtual presentations?
Yeah, actually that's a great
Answering
way to do it.
questions?
We've done that in the past, like New York. The Homeschool New York has a parents instructing challenge children. So like for special, needs. So she's always willing to do a virtual presentation. That's called PICC, P-I-C-C, Leah, Leah, for Loving Education at Home. And so she comes virtually. But I think a virtual option is really a great idea, because it would still be like, hey, let's collect together, but we're going to watch this virtual speaker, but we can still ask questions, as a group. Yep.
Great, thank you. Another attendee was interested in information on how Spanish speakers provide homeschooling for children. Do you have any materials or resources in other languages?
So that's an excellent question. I do know, like in New York City, the Latino population, so that may be a good one to contact somebody in that area where it's kind of exploding, and find out what they're using. Um, our Spanish is not, we have a lot of different languages in our Liverpool district, and believe it or not, Spanish is not the second one, it's Farsi. So we have, most of our curriculum is in English. So I apologize, I don't have a good answer for that, but I would definitely, if you wanted to try reaching out to the Homeschool New York representative down in the boroughs, that probably would be great. I'm sure they would be able to answer that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Looks like we are running out of time. So thank you to everyone who joined us today and submitted questions. You can contact Deanna if you have any other questions, or you can contact myself or Rebecca, and we will pass the information on. I just shared a link to the certificate of attendance in the chat. So if you'd like to get one of those certificates, please complete that form, or you can contact me and I'll send you a link to the form. And we also have a short evaluation survey I linked. If you can take a moment to complete that, that would be very helpful and we'll greatly appreciate it. And I think we're all set for today. Thank
Well,
you,
wonderful.
Deanna.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer questions, and best of luck in the connecting with the homeschoolers.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I will stop the recording.